I'm most grateful, Right Honourable Speaker, for the opportunity to speak to the 2022 budget. And Mr. Speaker, right from the outset, I would like to make it clear that the comments being made after the presentation of the budget by the Finance Minister that he will find a way of convincing us on this side to accept this budget will simply not work, Mr. Speaker. We on this side will listen to our constituents. We shall listen to the Ghanaian people, and we will re-echo the views, the feelings of the Ghanaian people. Nobody will convince us other than the people of this country, other than the Ghanaians who elected us and brought us to this house. Having said that, Mr. Speaker, I must state my preliminary disappointment about the 2022 budget. That disappointment, Mr. Speaker, emanates from the rather insensitive, the rather cruel, the rather unpardonable omission of the tidal waves humanitarian crisis that hit this country. The foreign policy of the president is that any time disasters of this nature have happened in other jurisdictions, he is among the first world leaders to comment, to empathize, to condemn. In Sierra Leone, when a similar disaster happened, they did not only issue a statement. The Vice President led a delegation to Sierra Leone to commiserate with them and to make donations. Here in Ghana, on the 6th of November, weeks before the budget was presented, the president, up to now, has refused to say a word. Not a statement of empathy, not a statement of sympathy. I have gone through the entire budget, works and housing, all the appendices. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, I have gone through from page 290, which has appendices of priority projects. There are tables there. 10B, 10C, 10D, 10E. Priority projects from now to 2024. In those appendices, from 2 pages 290. Not a mention of the Blekusu Coastal Protection Project. It's not a priority. Not now and not in the medium term. Go through pages 290, 291, 292, 293. All these things affect, I've heard people screaming, is this foreign policy? How do you think we will be viewed in the Committee of Nations? Leadership will be seen as a leadership that does not care, that does not owe the people a duty of care and responsibility. And Mr. Speaker, we are speaking of a humanitarian crisis of enormous proportions. Enormous proportions. And Mr. Speaker,
honorable members, I'll be compelled to mention the names of those who made such interventions. I'll mention your name. You can't hide under the shade of your seat and be shouting. Your constituents will hear your name, that you are the one shouting. Please, you may continue.
I'm grateful, Right Honourable Speaker. Right Honourable Speaker, I have heard some of our colleagues in other media discussions out of this chamber say that this budget must have been concluded in September. The last time I was on air with the Honourable Nana Komia, who said the budget must have been completed in September, and that is why it doesn't feature. Mr. Speaker, if you go to paragraph 43 of this budget document, an event the President attended and launched under the auspices of the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources as recent as 25th October. 25th October, finds expression. Indeed, this budget document, we all know that there was some postponement in the date. Right from the cover page, they were able to capture the date, the postponed date of 17 November, that it will present on 17 November. So this is just gross dereliction. And Mr. Speaker, if you see some of the pictures which I have here, Mr. Speaker, it is really troubling. It is sad. This is our caucus chairman, Honorable Bejra, when he went to visit a day after with the Keta MP, Honorable Gakpe. And Mr. Speaker, this is not Sierra Leone, this is not Haiti, this is Ghana. Mr. Speaker, this is former President Mahama. He went to make a donation. And you see a whole school, Mr. Speaker, a whole junior high school, only the blackboard is left. The school totally washed away by the tidal wave. Washed away by the tidal wave. Mr. Speaker, you have people who had to just run for their dear lives. Over 4,000 Ghanaians have been displaced as we speak. Over 4,000 Ghanaians. This is a humanitarian crisis which should have found expression in the 2022 budget. And there is not a mention, not a word. And I am totally disgusted. I am appalled. I am livid. I am outraged. And we cannot have this kind of leadership in our country. Mr. Speaker, the other matter which is of concern to me is all the commitments that the finance minister speaks of from pages 20 to 28 in the 2022 budget, referring to our ECOWAS convergence criteria and the entire ECOWAS integration agenda, which we have been pursuing as a country and as a sub-region for many years. It is sad, though, that when you go through the pages, Mr. Speaker, Ghana is one of the worst performing countries when it comes to meeting the convergence criteria. Indeed, with the secondary criteria, only 2 of the 7 key items have been met by Ghana. But Mr. Speaker, what is more worrying to me is that the entire 8 pages, from pages 20, 21, 22, all the way to 28, not a mention, Mr. Speaker, of the fact that as we speak, our borders remain closed. Ghana is the only country, it's about the only country in ECOWAS that still has its land borders closed. How would this budget and all of this ECOWAS talk from pages 20 to 28 benefit the Ghanaian people who live in our border communities, all the way from Boku, Pusiga, Golu, down to Elubu, and down to Aflao, Mr. Speaker? Thousands of Ghanaians whose livelihoods have been lost. As I speak, the president chaired a meeting in January this year and set as ECOWAS chairman a reopening target of 31st July 2021 of our land borders. As I speak to you, Mr. Speaker, Senegal has complied, Mali has complied, the Gambia has complied, Sierra Leone has complied, Liberia has complied, Guinea-Bissau has complied, Cote d'Ivoire has complied, Burkina Faso has complied, Niger has complied, Nigeria has complied. Indeed, Nigeria has gone beyond opening land borders for free movement of persons and goods with Niger and Benin to additionally opening their land checkpoints at Seme, Krake, Maigatari, and Imfum. Benin has complied. Togo has complied. Why is the ECOWAS chairman's country not leading by example? Why? Why? You chaired the meeting and you set the target of 31st July 2021. Ghanaians living in our border communities who keep protesting, who keep demonstrating. And it has become a place of just extortion, where now people are crossing the border through underhand dealings. Our colleagues who live in these border communities have said on this floor, time without number. I remember the Honorable Dr. Stoffe, the Honorable Jifa Gomashi, the Honorable Hajia Ladi Ayamba have all advocated against the continuous closure of the land borders, including key members of our ECOWAS delegation to the ECOWAS Parliament, like the Honorable Mahama Yariga, whose constituents continue to reel under these draconian closure of borders. When will Ghana comply with the 31st July 2021 deadline. This cannot continue, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, for the youth of our country who are listening to us, I heard previous speakers make the claim that this is some budget we haven't seen before about job creation and all of that. What they are hiding from the Ghanaian people, Mr. Speaker, is that when you read paragraph 325 of this budget, government is talking about staff rationalization. Government is talking about right sizing. There is some looming downsizing, losses in terms of jobs. And no wonder when you compare key sectors like the Ministry of Health, Mr. Speaker, you have a situation where the difference between the number of people employed in 2021 and the number of people who will be employed in 2022 declines by as much as 43,000. Then this business of USTAT, Mr. Speaker, I have interrogated the matter further. And contrary to the claim that government has set aside 1 billion cedis for USTAT, I was shocked to find out at Appendix 4C, page 252 of the budget, Mr. Speaker, that Appendix 4C reveals that we are depending on donors to fund this project by a whopping amount of 640,912,000. So we couldn't find 1 billion cedis to help our youth create jobs. Meanwhile, at the Presidency, the Office of Government Machinery, we all know, Mr. Speaker, that the allocation has increased from 2.6 billion to 3.1 billion. Where is our priority? Where is our priority? Mr. Speaker, perhaps this is the only country in the midst of a pandemic that the Ministry of Health budget has been slashed from 8.5 billion to 6.7 billion. And yet, as for Office of Government Machinery, it keeps going up. So this whole job creation agenda, Mr. Speaker, is important for us to expose the government's lack of commitment. No wonder when you go through the budget, Mr. Speaker, the appendix which deals with government flagship projects, it will shock you to realize, Mr. Speaker, that the USTAT program does not feature in government's flagship projects. It doesn't feature at all, Mr. Speaker. It is simply not there. It tells you that government itself does not believe in it. And I'm also not surprised, Mr. Speaker, that allocation to NAPCO has further declined from 672 million in the 2021 budget to 520 million in the 2022 budget. So they should stop deceiving the youth of this country that there is some grand commitment towards job creation. It is not there. It is just half and puff. There is no real commitment. Now, Mr. Speaker, I must come to the global situation within which this budget was presented. Ghana is not an island, as we all know. And some claims have been made in the budget, including how we are amongst the poorest performing countries when it comes to tax to GDP ratio and all of that. Mr. Speaker, I have here 3 important tables. The first is GDP growth rates, comparative analysis in sub-Saharan Africa. Ghana's 2020 GDP growth rate is 0.4%. Mr. Speaker, it will interest you to know that our neighbor, Cote d'Ivoire, grew at 2% despite COVID. Togo grew at 1.8%. Burkina Faso grew at 1.9%. Benin grew at 3.8%. DR Congo grew at 1.7%. Tanzania, 4.8%. Ethiopia, 6.1%. Guinea, 7.1%. Sao Tome and Principe, 3.0%. This is data according to the IMF. Then, on the World Bank website, Mr. Speaker, tax revenue to GDP ratios. We need to, Mr. Speaker, expose the falsity in the claims that we are not doing well as a country with tax revenues. Ghana has a 12.2% tax revenue to GDP ratio, according to the World Bank. Cote d'Ivoire has 12.0%, and these are figures up to 2019. Angola, 9.0%. Equatorial Guinea, 9.3%. Ethiopia, 6.7%. Gabon, 11.5%. Guinea-Bissau, 9.5%. Sudan, 7.8%. So, Mr. Speaker, the average, according to the World Bank, the current average of middle-income countries, tax to GDP ratio is 11.7%. We are doing 12.2%. Even Germany, Mr. Speaker, Germany is doing 11.4%. World Bank data. So the Ghanaian people are already overtaxed and they are overburdened. And we cannot have any justification, if you look at the global arena, the current global economic situation, to make a demand for more taxes, Mr. Speaker. That is why we on this side, and it has already been eloquently put out by our indefatigable minority leader, that this side will not support the imposition of further taxes. We will not support the Momo tax. We will not support these property rates increments. We will not support, Mr. Speaker, this attempt to increase fees and charges by 15%. Indeed, this is not the time for taxation. Every other country, they are cushioning their people. They are supporting their people. They are offering them reliefs. They are not imposing further hardship on the people. Mr. Speaker, I have another data set here.
Honorable member, you should be concluding. Your time is up.
Mr. Speaker, as I conclude, Mr. Speaker, if you look at the budget deficit comparative analysis in sub-Saharan Africa, Ghana is the only country that did 15.2%. Reckless expenditure because we wanted to win an election in 2020. Cote d'Ivoire did only 5.5%. Togo 4.7%. Burkina Faso 5.4%. Benin 3.0%. DR Congo 1.3%. Tanzania 1.8%. Ethiopia 3.0%. Guinea 3.1%. Sao Tome 5%. Clearly, there can be no basis to further impoverish the Ghanaian people and impose hardship on them. Government should look at cutting down on corruption. You read the CDD post-election survey, 53% of Ghanaians say corruption is on the increase. The Afrobarometer says 62% of Ghanaians do not trust the Akufo-Addo government to fight corruption. Read the Auditor General's report. 1.2 billion cedis of our oil revenues cannot be found.
Honorable
Look
member,
at the wastage in chartered aircraft.
Are you hearing me? Please.